It's movie time with John DeSando and his friends online. So everything is gonna be just fine. From the top down to the bottom. He's gonna let you know if you should stay home or if you should go. Might even yell if it's a spectacle. From San Francisco to Long Island. 'Cause nothing's better than a motion video.
It's Movie Time. It's produced and hosted by John DeSando. Listen to shows and read reviews online at WCBE.org.
I'm John DeSando,
And I'm G Kline.
and this is his movie time. And boy, oh boy, they need the experts for this.
John,
one.
what did you get me into on this one? Oh my gosh.
It's just had that feel to it that it could be challenging. And
Oh.
my goodness, it is.
It's not just challenging. This is one where I went home and had to shower, I think, afterwards.
And in fact, by the time people hear this, they're probably not even around. But it's called I Saw the TV Glow.
I saw the TV glow. This one was not even on my radar.
I know.
Yeah, went in to see this. I'm going to start right out and say, not one of my favorite movies this year. Not by a long shot.
Look, I thought because of its trans theme that it would be of interest.
Well,
to
it
us.
does have an LGBTQ angle to
Yeah.
it, but of course, any good film critic is not going to just be 100% invested in any LGBTQ representation. You've got to look at the big picture. What is the character in the movie for? Does it serve a purpose? Is it well done? And in this movie, the presence of the trans character is not overt. You're not even told that the character is trans, and I would debate that we don't even know for sure that the character of Maddie is trans. But that is...
Well, she does. In fact, both of them identify themselves at one small scene where they ask each other whether they like. When she asks him, when he asks her if she likes men or women, she says, "I like girls."
She says she likes girls.
Right now, she asks him, and he evades her.
Yeah,
He says he likes TV shows.
and we'll get on him in just a second, but we don't know from that scene whether she is a lesbian or is she a transgender.
Man, I'm telling you, Ken, Ken was trying to school me in this before we did the show, and I'm lost on the terminology.
John and you and I are handicapped because we grew up in an era that had very limited definitions in the LGBT. The LGBTQ didn't exist in the 1970s. It didn't exist even 10 years ago. This is all new, and fortunately the cinema is now starting to get up to speed. But this is not necessarily the movie we want to be talking about when we talk about LGBT film.
All I want to do is say gay. That's all I want to do. Ken's telling me, John, you can't do that.
You can't do that. We've got to be much more understanding and more knowledgeable about the LGBTQ, which is now expanded to additional letters, and probably we'll add a few more before it's done. However, let's get back to this movie.
I know, let's get into it.
Yeah.
I want to say something about it that I was helped through by the strong sense of the importance of a media to teenage kids. That media is, their reality. And it's not everybody's reality, but it's there.
There's two things going on here. There's media, which is...
You can't even wait to get in here.
I can't wait. There's media going on here, which is kids wanting content.
Yeah.
Whether that media is on their cell phones, or that media is on movies, or that media is on television for the few who still watch it on a TV screen. But there's also something called fandom. And fandom is when a group of people who all love the exact same medium, or the exact same show, let's say, get together and form a relationship with each other because of their love of that show. And this movie is exploring fandom in a very strange way,
Don't
but
you
it is.
think, as you're describing it, this could be Seinfeld people?
Well, this movie, the closest you can come to the TV show they're in love with is probably Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Well, right, yeah, but in the sense that in the broader sense that you're talking about fandom, I mean, there were millions of people.
Oh, there's a difference there too. There's millions of people who tuned in every week for Seinfeld, for MASH,
and
for All in the Family.
Yeah.
But that was not fandom. Fandom is when we're talking about people who actually get involved, write their own stories, and publish their own stories of these characters. They do artwork of these characters, and they go to conventions and they dress as these characters.
They fully immerse themselves.
They fully immerse themselves, and they work as a community. They come together, they meet each other, and we're getting, with this movie, a little snippet of that fandom in that This woman, Maddie, and I'm going to use the term woman just because we don't have any explanation if she's anything different, is obsessed with this TV show called The Opaque Pink, The Pink
Is
Opaque.
it on the Young
Pink Opaque.
Adult Network at
Yeah.
10:30 Saturday night? Now, his mom will not let him stay up that late. Nor
No,
will
it's
I-
10:30 on Tuesday nights. Was it Tuesday?
Saturday.
Saturday night, 10:30 on Saturday nights.
Nowhere.
Yeah, so let's talk about these characters though. Maddie, we've already discussed,
Yeah.
possibly a trans male, possibly a lesbian, we don't know.
Well, but I think this movie is really about
Owen.
About Owen. played by
Owen.
Justice.
Now, Owen, the best way I can describe Owen is very clearly on the autism scale. Probably very high up the autism scale.
He has not figured out who he is.
He has
at
not
all.
figured out
And
who
what
he
I
is.
like, well, one of the things I like here is that they're not pounding out what their sexual orientation
Nope.
strongly is.
Nope.
For him, and what I think it helps for almost any teen, he just doesn't know who he is yet.
Well, he's low functioning in a lot of ways.
Right.
And we have to separate again autism from sexual orientation because they're two entirely different things. He is definitely on the autism spectrum. So, and that's not uncommon in fandom also. I've been in fandom myself for over 45 years, so I know a lot of people. The problem I have with this movie is I should be identifying with these characters. Having been in fandom for so long, I should be connecting with Maddie and connecting with Owen and going, yes, I'm a Buffy fan too, and yes, I can see what they're trying to do. I don't identify with either of these characters. And I came away from this movie very frustrated and very disappointed. I really wanted these characters to be more relatable, more connectable, and frankly, I should have been the target market for this movie, and I do not connect to this movie at all.
Jane Schoenbrun, who is the director, and has had a previous big smash hit with We're All Going to the World's Fair.
We're all going to the World's Fair. I don't know how much of a smash hit it was. I've never heard of it, but apparently it has a cult following.
Among some of your fandom. and this was only like 3 years ago where it came out. So she's well known with them. You and I have never heard of her.
Never heard of her.
We certainly will not forget her. Now.
Never heard of anybody involved in this movie at all.
I know. So the thing that helps me through all of this, well, I'm just a neophyte when it comes to sexuality in its various forms, as you would say.
And you are not alone. And it's a function of the age group.
Yeah.
You know, we grew up at a time when the concepts of sexuality were very, very close, much smaller than they are today, not nearly into the shades of gray and the various categorizations that we have today.
But I think
But we're a better world today for all of the changes that have come from this.
what I do see when I see the fixation that our teens have, for instance, with smartphones, and I see their fascination with the Saturday night show that was really verboten for him, but for the two of them, when I see that, I see how teens can become obsessed, and I see how that helps them to identify themselves, that even at some point in the film, you gotta help me, don't the two of them get into the show somehow?
The two of them are their lives are centered around the show, and in part because they don't seem to have anything else going on.
Oh, I know, right?
One of the problems I have with this movie that I actually had with a lot of shows like Buffy the Vampire Slayer is there's a complete absence of an adult or a father figure in this. None of these characters have parents that are doing their job as a parent.
Well, wait now, for Owen's mom, she's very tender and caring, you know, she's ineffectual. And Dad is a stereotypical male, right?
Well, I hope not stereotypical. He's not very nice.
Well, and stereotypical in that sense that movies can portray it.
Yeah.
He's gruff, he's not tender. You begin to see why Owen just doesn't know where the hell he is.
These characters are able to work because of the absence of parental supervision and any kind of support group.
Yeah.
These are two loners, two very self-isolated people who do not have the social network that they need to be to function in a society. And that's when you pigeonhole a character into that kind of thing, then you can develop a character that is so abnormal as to be able to make the story that you want to tell. But you're telling the story about a very abnormal person, and it's very difficult for the audience to relate to that character.
No, the director doesn't even get into, does she, really, the relationships with the other students? Does that
It's
happen at all?
non-existent.
Yeah.
It's just non-existent.
This is where most movies like this will give you a good idea of the stark differences between straight kids kids who follow the formula and kids who don't. On our-
This is a movie very much like Donnie Darko.
Yes.
Or I would, maybe Napoleon Dynamite, although I think Napoleon Dynamite did a better
Right,
job of having
right.
relationships.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the only movie I could compare this to is probably Donnie Darko.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely correct.
So yeah, my struggle with this movie is that the characters are so isolated and so abnormal. It is really, really difficult to relate to these characters, and it's really difficult to follow their journey. Plus, the TV show that they're into is never really well explored. So they know the
I
show
wonder
inside. Now, we don't.
How much of it do we actually
We get to see a few little snippets.
Yeah.
And when we first see the show, we're being told, and I will say that this director was very clearly trying to represent Buffy the Vampire Slayer, because the opening credits use exactly the same style of script as Buffy. The creator of the show is named Josh, just as Buffy was Joss. And there's a character named Tara, which was one of the 4 principal characters of Buffy. So I will make the connection that this director was trying to emulate Buffy.
And she certainly caught the 90s with the idea of kind of cheesy presentation.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
there was nothing high about their expenditure here.
Although I will object that later on, when the character is much older, he goes back and looks at the videos of this show, and he sees that this show is nothing but a very juvenile, very campy show, which is not true of Buffy. You can go back and rewatch episodes of Buffy, and they hold up just as well today as they did when they aired in 2000.
All right, G Kline. People are going to have to find out what the title actually means. I saw the TV go, but right now, what do you recommend?
I would recommend that you let this film die and disappear into.
I saw the TV.
Yeah, and leave it to people who are dedicated to finding an obscure movie to watch this. There's nothing about this movie I recommend.
And I don't think we have to worry, because I bet it's not going to be around.
By the time this show is airing, that's probably out of theaters and out of people's minds.
It's movie time with John DeSando and his friends online. So everything is gonna be just fine. From the top down to the bottom. He's gonna let you know if you should stay home or if you should go. Might even yell if it's a spectacle.